The funeral of a newborn marks the most devastating moment in the life of a powerful tycoon. But amid the silence, he cries out in despair, "My son is alive," awakening looks of shock and disbelief. Small details begin to reveal a disturbing mystery involving altered documents, disappearances, and a hidden criminal network. The sun had barely risen when James Anderson woke up startled in his mansion in Beverly Hills. Something was wrong. He could feel it. The 45-year-old businessman, owner of one of the largest business conglomerates in the United States, always trusted his intuition. It was what guided him in the most important decisions of his life, from buying his first company to the moment he decided to propose to Emily. Emily. His heart tightened at the thought of his wife. Just 3 days ago, she had given birth to their first child, William, in the most prestigious private hospital in Los Angeles. The pregnancy had been a dream come true after years of trying, and the boy's birth should have been the happiest moment of their lives. Should have been. James got up from the armchair in the office where he had fallen asleep among papers and reports. He couldn't sleep in the bedroom anymore, not after. His thoughts were interrupted by the ring of his cell phone. It was Dr. Thompson, the hospital director. "Mr. Anderson, I'm sorry, there were complications during the night. Little William, he didn't make it." The world stopped. The doctor's words echoed in his mind like a distant nightmare. It couldn't be true. He had visited his son the night before. The baby was fine, pink, strong. How could this have happened? "I need to see him," James demanded, his voice trembling. "We've taken care of everything, Mr. Anderson. Given the situation, we recommend a quick procedure. The funeral can be held today." The hospital's rush to resolve everything deeply disturbed him. Why such urgency? Why couldn't he see his son one last time? Emily reacted to the news in a state of deep shock, sedated by doctors since the delivery, due to supposed postpartum depression. She only cried silently, hugging the small blue blanket she had knitted during pregnancy. In the hospital chapel, while the small white coffin was on display, James observed the faces around him. Los Angeles elite had turned out in force. After all, the Andersons were one of the most influential families in the city. Among the condolences and looks of grief, something caught his attention. Sarah, the nanny they had hired during the pregnancy, wasn't present. She who had become so close to Emily, who had accompanied every moment of the pregnancy, had simply disappeared. It was when he approached the coffin that his intuition screamed louder. As he tried to slightly lift the small casket, he felt something strange, it seemed. Empty. The weight didn't correspond to what it should be. His heart raced. "We need to proceed with the burial now, Mr. Anderson," interrupted Dr. Thompson, appearing at his side with a suspicious urgency in his gaze. "It's best for everyone, especially for Mrs. Anderson." James looked at his wife, who was sitting in one of the front rows, supported by her older sister, Rachel. Emily looked like a shadow of the strong and determined woman she had always been. A brilliant lawyer, she had abandoned her promising career to dedicate herself to the long-dreamed motherhood. Now she was destroyed. Among those present, one face in particular caught his attention: Michael Evans, CEO of a rival company, and Emily's ex-boyfriend, a detail from the past that she had never mentioned and that James discovered by chance in an old photo. What was he doing there? And why was he smiling discreetly while talking to Dr. Thompson? At that moment, something inside James awakened. An inexplicable certainty took over his being. His son wasn't in that coffin. William was alive somewhere, and he would discover the truth no matter what it cost. "This funeral is not going to happen," his voice thundered through the chapel, making all those present turn to him. "My son is alive." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily raised her teary eyes, a mixture of pain and concern in her gaze. Dr. Thompson tried to intervene, talking about grief and how it could affect reasoning, but James wasn't listening anymore. In his mind, the pieces were starting to fit together: the abnormal rush of the hospital, Sarah's disappearance, Michael's presence, the strange weight of the coffin. Something much bigger and darker was happening, and he was determined to find out what it was. What James didn't know was that his search for the truth was about to reveal secrets that would forever change not only his life, but also everything he believed he knew about the people closest to him. From that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. The confusion in the hospital chapel turned into an intense buzz after James's declaration. Emily, still, visibly shaken, was supported by Rachel to the car, while Dr. Thompson tried to calm those present, claiming that this reaction was perfectly normal in the face of trauma. Back at the mansion, silence weighed like lead. James locked himself in his office, ignoring attempts by family and friends to talk. His hands trembled as he searched his laptop for information about the hospital, similar cases, anything that could confirm his suspicions. That's when he found an unread message on his cell phone, sent by Sarah 3 days earlier, exactly on the day of William's birth. "Mr. Anderson, I urgently need to speak with you. It's about the baby. Something is very wrong at the hospital." His heart raced. Why didn't he see this message before? The nanny had always been extremely dedicated and professional. Her sudden disappearance now made even less sense. He tried to return the call, but the number was deactivated. Upstairs, he could hear Emily's muffled sobs. He climbed the stairs, hesitant, and found his wife sitting in the armchair of the baby's room, still untouched, with all the preparations for an arrival that didn't happen. Or had it? "How could you make that scene at the hospital?" Emily asked, her voice choked. "Isn't it hard enough already? Emily, don't you see there's something very strange going on? Sarah is gone, the hospital is acting suspiciously, and that Coffin—" "Enough," she shouted, standing up abruptly. "You're scaring me, James. Our son is gone, and you need to accept that. Dr. Thompson already warned me that you might have a reaction like this, that some people can't handle the loss." "Dr. Thompson?" James interrupted, his voice laden with distrust. "The same Dr. Thompson who was talking to Michael Evans today? Since when does your ex-boyfriend attend funerals of families he barely knows?" Emily paled. How do you know about Michael? So you admit there's a history? Why did you never tell me about him?" "It was a long time ago, James. It wasn't important." She looked away, but something in her voice betrayed that there was more to that story. At that moment, Rachel entered the room. "Emily needs to rest," she declared, giving James a stern look. The doctors recommended absolute rest. James went downstairs, his mind buzzing. He decided to make a call that would change the course of his investigation. David Carter was his college friend and now ran a respected private investigation agency. "David, I need your help. I want the entire history of Cedars-Sinai Hospital for the last 5 years. Birth records, deaths, employees, especially about the director, Regina Thompson. And I need to find Sarah Johnson, my ex-nanny. She disappeared 3 days ago." Meanwhile, at the hospital, a tense meeting was taking place in the boardroom. Regina Thompson, the hospital director, a woman of impeccable appearance and penetrating gaze, stared at Dr. Thompson. "The situation has spiraled out of control," she said, her voice controlled but tense. "James Anderson is not a man we can simply ignore. He has connections, influence." "I've already taken care of it," Michael Evans intervened, emerging from the shadows of the office. "Emily still trusts me. She believes her husband is having an emotional breakdown. Soon we'll get the psychiatric commitment he so desperately needs." Regina shook her head, worried. "And the nanny?" "Don't worry about her," Michael smiled coldly. "She's far away from here, taking care of other matters." The next day, James received the first report from David. The findings were disturbing. In the last 5 years, there had been a suspicious pattern of newborn deaths at the hospital, all from influential families. In each case, the procedures were rushed, without autopsies, without in-depth investigations. Even more intriguing, Regina Thompson, before taking over as hospital director, had worked at an obscure adoption agency that was shut down for irregularities. The name of the agency? New Beginnings, the same name that appeared on some mysterious documents that Sarah had left on his desk days before her disappearance. Meanwhile, Emily was receiving an unexpected visit in her room. Michael Evans, with his enigmatic smile, brought news that would make her question everything she knew about her past, her present, and especially about her husband. The afternoon was falling in Los Angeles when Emily received Michael in her Room. Rachel had gone out to fetch the prescribed medications, leaving them alone for the first time in years. The businessman approached his former girlfriend with a familiarity that time had not erased. "You're as beautiful as ever, Emily," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Even after everything." Emily looked away, uneasy. "Why are you here?" "Michael, after so long I came because I care about you, and because there are things about James that you need to know." He paused dramatically, taking an envelope from his jacket. "Your husband is not who you think he is." Meanwhile, in his company office, James was receiving the first significant discoveries from David. The investigator had found surprising connections between Cedars-Sinai Hospital and the old New Beginnings agency. "Regina Thompson wasn't just an employee of the agency," David explained, spreading documents on the desk. "She was a hidden partner. And you know who else was involved? Michael Evans." James felt his stomach churn. The connections were starting to make sense, but crucial pieces of the puzzle were still missing. "And what about Sarah?" "I found something interesting," David continued. "Before working for you, she was a nurse at Cedars-Sinai Hospital. She resigned after an undocumented incident. Coincidentally, at the same time, there was another case, similar to yours, a rich family, a baby who supposedly didn't survive." James's cell phone vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number. "Look for Dr. Laura Fields. She was on duty the day your son was born. She resigned the next day." "David, I need you to find everything about this doctor," James ordered, feeling he was close to something important. In the mansion's bedroom, Emily was reading the documents brought by Michael with trembling hands. They were financial reports, photos, evidence that James had systematically sabotaged Michael's business years ago, nearly bankrupting him. "He found out about us, about our past," Michael explained softly. "It wasn't a coincidence that he showed up at that charity event where you were. He planned everything, including our separation." Emily felt the world spin. She remembered the beginning of her relationship with James, how he appeared in her life exactly when she was most vulnerable after breaking up with Michael. Could it be possible? "There's more," Michael continued. "Remember the fertility clinic? The doctor who treated you? He was a personal friend of James. Every detail of your pregnancy was monitored, controlled." In downtown Los Angeles, James finally managed to locate Dr. Laura Fields. She had moved to a small town in the countryside, apparently after receiving a generous amount in her bank account. "Dr. Fields," he said on the phone, "I need to know the truth about what happened that night." There was a long silence. "Mr. Anderson," she finally replied, her voice trembling, "there are things it's better not to know. Powerful people are involved. But look in the hospital's dead files, folder B237, that's all I can say." At the mansion, Rachel returned to find Emily in a state of shock, the documents scattered on the bed. Michael had left, leaving behind seeds of doubt that were beginning to sprout. "He lied to me, Rachel," Emily sobbed. "James lied from the beginning." Rachel picked up the documents, analyzing them with a critical eye. A lawyer, like her sister, something in the papers caught her attention. "Emily, wait, there's something strange here." At the hospital, Regina Thompson was receiving a disturbing call. "He's getting too close," the voice on the other end of the line warned. "We need to act now." Regina looked out the window of her office, observing the city stretching out under the orange sky of the late afternoon. "Don't worry," she replied coldly. "I have a plan B. I always have." That night, as the city slept, 3 simultaneous events changed the course of history. James discovered bombshell information in the hospital archives. Emily made a decision that would shake her marriage, and a mysterious figure left an envelope at the reception of the Anderson mansion, an envelope containing photos that would reveal a secret capable of changing everything they thought they knew about the truth. The clock struck midnight when James finally gained access to folder B237 in the hospital's dead files. The night shift security guard, an old acquaintance who owed favors to the Anderson family, pretended not to see when he entered the dusty basement room. Among dozens of yellowed documents, one file in particular caught his attention. It was Emily's admission record on the day of delivery. Something in the document seemed out of place. The signature of the responsible doctor was not Dr. Thompson's, but Dr. Laura Fields's. However, all subsequent documents, including William's death certificate, bore Thompson's signature. Why change doctors in the middle of the procedure? James muttered to himself, photographing the documents with his cell phone. At the mansion, Emily found the mysterious envelope left at the reception. Inside old photos that made her heart stop. They were images of her with Michael from 15 years ago in intimate situations. But there was something more. On the edges of one of the photos, partially cropped, James appeared in the background observing the couple. "It can't be," Emily whispered, her hands trembling. Rachel, who was by her side, took the photos. Her expression changed as she analyzed one of them more closely. "Emily, look at this." She pointed to an almost imperceptible detail. "The date printed on this photo. There's something wrong." Meanwhile, in Michael Evans' luxurious apartment in Bel Air, Regina Thompson arrived for an emergency meeting. She found him drinking whiskey, visibly disturbed. "He found the folder," Michael said without preamble. "The guard just warned me." Regina maintained her characteristic calm. It was part of the plan. Those documents were carefully prepared. And Dr. Fields, she might talk. Impossible. She's being very well compensated to maintain her new life in the countryside. Besides, she doesn't know everything. What neither of them knew was that, at that exact moment, Sarah, the missing nanny, was in an internet cafe in San Diego, sending emails with copies of compromising documents to various journalists. Her hand hesitated before clicking send. That information would change many lives. Back at the hospital, James was making an even more intriguing discovery. In folder B237, there was also a transcript of a telephone conversation between Regina Thompson and a contact identified only as M.E., Michael Evans' initials. The date was 3 months before William's birth. "Everything is prepared," the transcript said. "The fertility clinic followed the special protocol. No one will suspect." James felt his blood run cold. The fertility clinic? The same place where Emily had undergone treatment? His phone vibrated. It was a message from David, his investigator. Urgent. "I discovered that Regina Thompson and Michael Evans were partners in another company, besides the adoption agency. A fertility clinic, closed 5 years ago after allegations of irregular procedures. In the mansion's bedroom, Rachel finally identified what was wrong with the photos. Emily, look at the shadow of the objects in this image. The angle doesn't correspond to the time indicated on the clock in the background, and here the reflection in the glass. This photo was manipulated." Emily sat down, stunned. So Michael lied. But why? "The question isn't why he lied," Rachel replied, "but why now? Why show these falsified photos precisely when James is investigating the hospital?" In the hospital's file room, James found another revealing document, a transfer request for a newborn to another hospital unit signed by Emily. But the signature, there was something strange about it. His cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Mr. Anderson," a female voice whispered, "this is Nurse Anna from the nursery. I worked the shift when your son was born. There's something I need to tell you." "Yeah, about that night. Something about Dr. Regina and Mr. Evans." At that moment, the pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, revealing a much more complex and disturbing picture than anyone could have imagined. What began as a search for a lost son was about to reveal a web of lies, manipulations, and secrets that extended far beyond the corridors of Cedars-Sinai Hospital. Nurse Anna met James in a discreet cafe in the Echo Park neighborhood, far from prying eyes of the hospital. Her hands trembled as she held her coffee cup, and her eyes constantly checked the entrance of the establishment. "That night," she began hesitantly, "I was in the nursery when Dr. Regina appeared with a transfer order. She said the baby needed special care in another unit. But Mr. Anderson, your son was perfectly healthy." James felt his heart race. "And what happened after that?" "I saw when they took the little one away. He was crying strongly, a healthy cry. Hours later, Dr. Thompson announced that the child hadn't made it. But there was something strange. I saw Michael Evans leaving the restricted wing of the hospital carrying a thermal briefcase, the kind used for transporting medical material. On the other side of the city, Emily was rereading for the 10th time the documents found by Rachel. Her sister had discovered inconsistencies in the dates, signatures in small details that would go unnoticed to less trained eyes. Michael is lying, Rachel concluded, organizing the evidence on the table. These photos were manipulated. The financial documents have serious inconsistencies. He's trying to turn you against James, but why? Emily felt a wave of guilt wash over her. I need to talk to James, she decided, picking up her cell phone. In Regina Thompson's office, a tense meeting was taking place. Michael was pacing back and forth, visibly agitated. Nurse Anna betrayed us, he said, running his hands through his graying hair. The entire plan is at risk. Regina maintained her unshakable posture. Calm down. We have the main thing. Emily is exactly where we wanted her. Soon, she'll ask for her husband's commitment herself. And if she discovers the truth about the clinic, about what really happened during the fertility treatment? Regina's phone rang, interrupting the conversation. It was her secretary. Dr. Thompson, James Anderson is here. He demands to speak with you. At the cafe, Nurse Anna continued her revelation. There's a secret file on Dr. Regina's personal computer. It contains records of all the special procedures performed at the fertility clinic, including Mrs. Anderson's. How do you know this? James questioned, feeling a chill down his spine. Because I also worked at the clinic. I saw things. Procedures that didn't follow normal protocol. Dr. Regina had a special list of patients, all from influential families. Their treatment was different. James received a message from David. I discovered something about the clinic. They developed an experimental fertilization procedure, something related to genetic manipulation. Regina and Michael were the main investors. At the mansion, Emily found an old diary of hers, stored in a box of memories. In it, there were notes about her treatment at the clinic. Something caught her attention. In the last consultations before pregnancy, she had written about strange side effects, unexplained drowsiness, periods of confused memory. Rachel, reading over her sister's shoulder, turned pale. Emily, this looks like you may have been drugged during the treatment. At the hospital, James finally entered Regina's office. The director greeted him with a calculated smile, but her eyes betrayed tension. Mr. Anderson, your accusations are very serious. Do you have proof of what you're saying? I have something better, James replied, placing a USB drive on the desk. I have the files from your old fertility clinic, and I know what you did to my wife. Regina's smile faltered for a second. At that moment, her cell phone vibrated with a message from Michael. She remembered. Emily remembered what happened at the clinic. Outside the hospital, a van from a television station parked discreetly. An investigative reporter was reading the emails sent by Sarah, preparing for the biggest story of her career. The truth was about to come to light, a truth that would forever transform not only the Andersons' lives, but the entire private healthcare system of the country. And at the center of it all, a baby who somewhere was waiting to be reunited with his true family. The confrontation in Regina Thompson's office unfolded like a game of chess. James kept his eyes fixed on the hospital director, observing every micro-expression on her seemingly impassive face. These files, he continued, pointing to the USB drive on the desk, show that you weren't just an ordinary fertility clinic. You developed a special program selecting specific couples. Why? Regina adjusted herself in her leather chair, maintaining her composure. Mr. Anderson, all we did was help couples who couldn't have children. Any other interpretation is a product of your imagination, affected by recent trauma. Then how do you explain this? James slid a document across the desk. It's a detailed report of the procedures performed on Emily, signed by Dr. Marcus Vieira, your former partner at the clinic. He describes an experimental protocol, not authorized, by the Medical Ethics Board. Regina's phone rang again. It was Michael. She ignored the call, but her hands trembled slightly. At the Anderson mansion, Emily and Rachel were making a disturbing discovery in the old diary. Between the pages there was a crumpled business card from the fertility clinic with a handwritten note on the back. Genesis Project, Candidate 37. "My God," Rachel whispered. "They used you as a guinea pig in some kind of experiment." Emily felt the world spin. Fragments of memory began to emerge. Consultations where she felt strangely drowsy. Conversations she couldn't fully remember. Documents she had signed without reading properly. "Rachel," she said suddenly, "I need to go. To the hospital. Now." Meanwhile, in the hospital reception, reporter Jessica Vale from Channel 12 was preparing for a live broadcast. The emails sent by Sarah had reached the newsrooms of several media outlets, and the story was about to explode. In Regina's office, the confrontation continued. "You not only manipulated the fertility treatment," James accused, "but also orchestrated the entire birthing process. Why switch from Dr. Fields to Dr. Thompson in the middle of the procedure? Why the rush to forge a death certificate?" Regina finally lost her composure. "You don't understand, do you? We made history in medicine. Our fertilization program achieved something unprecedented, something that would revolutionize the future of human reproduction. But people like you, stuck on outdated ethical issues, would never understand. Where is my son? Your son? And who guarantees that he's really your son, Mr. Anderson?" The office door opened abruptly. Emily was standing there, pale but determined, with Rachel by her side. "I can guarantee it," she said, her voice firm, "because I finally remembered everything." In Regina's pocket, her cell phone was vibrating insistently. On the screen, a message from Michael. "The press is in the lobby. Sarah sent the documents to all the newspapers. We need to act now." Emily advanced into the room, holding her old diary and the card with the Genesis Project note in her hands. "You drugged me during the treatment," she accused. "You altered my exams, manipulated the results. But why? What did you really do?" "To me in that clinic," Regina stood up, surprisingly calm. "What did we do? We gave you what you wanted most, a child, a special child, genetically enhanced. Her baby that would be the first of a new generation." "What are you talking about?" James questioned, feeling a chill down his spine. "Genesis Project," Regina explained, an almost fanatical gleam in her eyes. "A revolutionary program of genetic modification in human embryos. Michael provided the funding, I developed the technique. We just needed suitable couples, influential, rich, desperate for a child." In the hospital lobby, the TV cameras were starting to roll. Jessica Vale began her report. "We're live from Cedars-Sinai Hospital, where an impressive story of unethical medical experimentation is about to be revealed." Suddenly, a scream echoed through the corridor. It was Nurse Anna running towards Regina's office. "They're taking the baby," she shouted. "Michael is on the helipad with him." The masks had fallen, but the complete truth was still about to be revealed. And on top of the hospital, the sound of helicopter blades cut through the Los Angeles night air. The elevator seemed to move in slow motion as it ascended to the top floor of Cedars-Sinai Hospital. James, Emily, and Rachel stood side by side, each second weighing like an eternity. On the digital console, the floor numbers blinked slowly. 12, 13, 14. Regina had tried to prevent them from leaving her office, but Nurse Anna, in a moment of courage, blocked her path. "Enough lies, Dr. Thompson. I can't be complicit in this anymore." In the hospital lobby, reporter Jessica Vale continued her live broadcast. Sources confirm that the so-called Genesis Project conducted unauthorized genetic experiments on dozens of babies in recent years. Inside the elevator, Emily held James's hand tightly. "Forgive me," she whispered. "I should have trusted you from the beginning." "Now is not the time for that," Rachel interjected, her eyes fixed on the numbers that kept climbing. "We need to get to the helipad before—" The elevator stopped abruptly on the 15th floor. The lights flickered. "No, no, no!" James punched the control panel. "Regina must have blocked access to the top floor." "The emergency stairs," Rachel remembered. locating the fire door. "We can still make it." As they hurriedly climbed the last flights of stairs, the noise of the helicopter blades grew louder. In Emily's pocket, her cell phone vibrated, a message from Michael. "He's safe with me. It's better this way. You know it is." The strong wind on the helipad made their hair and clothes flutter when they finally reached the top of the building. Michael was a few meters from the helicopter, carrying a bundle in his arms. Beside him was a woman James immediately recognized from the photos in his investigation, Laura Thompson, Regina's sister and chief scientist of the Genesis project. "Stay back," Michael shouted over the noise of the blades. "You don't understand. What's at stake here? It's my son." Emily advanced a few steps. "Michael, please." "Your son," Laura gave a bitter laugh. "He's much more than that. He's the first complete success of the Genesis project, a genetically enhanced human being. Greater disease resistance, increased cognitive capacity, potentially extended lifespan." "You're insane," James shouted. "He's a baby, not a scientific experiment." "Insane?" Michael retorted. "We're visionaries. Regina and Laura developed something revolutionary. Imagine a new generation of humans free from the genetic flaws that limit us. And Emily," he turned to his ex-girlfriend, "you were handpicked for this project. Your genetics, your family history. It was perfect." Rachel, who had discreetly moved to the side, noticed something crucial. Michael was holding the baby in a strange, almost awkward way. In the hospital lobby, Regina watched in horror the live broadcast that now showed images of the helipad, captured by a TV station helicopter. Her empire was crumbling before the cameras. The Genesis project wasn't about helping people. Emily took another step forward, finally understanding the whole picture. It was about power, control. You wanted to create a genetically modified elite, didn't you? And use my son as proof of concept. "Your son would be a pioneer," Laura argued. "The first of many. We already have other selected couples, other clinics, prepared." At this moment, a baby's cry cut through the air, but it didn't come from the bundle in Michael's arms. It came from a side door of the helipad where Sarah emerged, carrying a baby. "Looking for him?" she asked, a triumphant smile on her face. "Did you really think I'd let you take William?" The bundle in Michael's arms was just a distraction, their strategy to buy time while Laura tried to escape with the real baby through an alternative route, a plan frustrated by Sarah's cunning. "How?" Michael stammered, dropping the fake bundle. "I never left the hospital," Sarah explained. "I hid in the abandoned wing on the 12th floor, monitoring every move you made. When I saw Laura taking the baby from the neonatal unit, I followed her. You were so busy with your brilliant plan that you didn't even notice I switched the babies." Emily ran towards the nanny, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in days, William was back in his mother's arms. But the night wasn't over yet. Michael pulled an envelope from his jacket. "I have here the complete list of all the Genesis project babies," he announced. "All the couples involved, all the modifications made. If I fall, everyone falls with me." The wind on the helipad blew even stronger, making the envelope in Michael's hands flutter like a white flag. Emily hugged William against her chest, protecting him from the gale, while James positioned himself between his family and his former rival. "This list," Michael continued, his voice competing with the noise of the blades, "has the names of judges, politicians, businessmen, all who participated in the Genesis project. Do you really want this to come to light?" Rachel stepped forward, her experience as a lawyer surfacing. "Michael, you're being filmed live at this very moment." She pointed to the TV station helicopter, hovering over the hospital. "The entire country is watching your confession." Michael's face paled. Laura, who was by his side, tried to grab the envelope, but he held it tightly. "You don't understand," Laura argued desperately. "The Genesis project is bigger than all of us. It's the future of humanity." Sarah, who was still near the side door, decided to reveal her last card. "Ladies and gentlemen, while I was hiding in the hospital, I not only protected little William, I also copied all the files from Dr. Regina's personal computer. including the videos of the project's secret meetings. In the hospital lobby, Regina watched everything on the security monitors. Her scientific empire, built over decades, was crumbling in a matter of minutes. With trembling hands, she typed a message to Michael. "Activate the emergency protocol." Bakeo. On the helipad, Michael checked his cell phone, and a sinister smile formed on his lips. "You think you've won? Regina just initiated the self-destruction of all the hospital servers. In minutes, all digital evidence will be lost forever. Except," Rachel smiled, raising her own cell phone, "for the backups we made of everything. In the last 3 days, every document, every video, every record of the Genesis project is safe on multiple servers." Laura staggered, leaning against the wall. "No, all our work." "Work?" Emily finally spoke, her voice laden with indignation. "You played God! You manipulated lives, families, innocent babies!" At this moment, the helipad door opened again. It was reporter Jessica Vale with her film crew, followed by several federal agents. "Mr. Michael Evans," announced one of the agents, "the FBI has a warrant for your arrest and that of Dr. Laura Thompson. The charges include illegal human experimentation, falsification of medical documents, and criminal conspiracy." Michael looked at the envelope in his hands, then at Emily. For a moment, the obsessive love he had nurtured for her all these years showed in his gaze. "I did all this for you," he whispered. "It was always for you. Ever since you left me for James, I swore that one day I would prove my worth. The Genesis project would be my greatest legacy. Our greatest legacy." "You've gone mad," Emily replied, kissing William's forehead. "You turned your resentment into a sick obsession. You used our past as an excuse for atrocities." James, who had been observing the scene in silence, finally understood the extent of his rival's personal tragedy. Michael wasn't just an ambitious scientist or an unscrupulous businessman. He was a man broken by unrequited love, who turned his pain into a distorted crusade. "The list," Laura mumbled, reaching out to Michael. "We need to destroy it." But before Michael could make any move, Rachel had already taken the envelope from his hands. "This is now federal evidence," she declared, handing it to the agents. As the handcuffs were placed, Michael looked one last time at the couple with their baby. "Don't you realize he's special? That he carries the future in his DNA?" "He is special," James replied, embracing Emily and William. "Because he's our son, nothing else matters." As Michael and Laura were led away, Sarah approached the couple. "I'm sorry for disappearing," she apologized, "but it was the only way to protect William and gather enough evidence." "You saved our family," Emily smiled, tears in her eyes. "We can never thank you enough." But while the family celebrated their reunion in the hospital corridors, Regina Thompson made one last call. The Genesis project might have been discovered in Los Angeles, but its ramifications extended to other states, other clinics, other countries, and somewhere other special babies were growing, carrying in their DNA the secrets of a science that defied the limits of ethics and nature. The morning after dawned with headlines exploding in every newspaper across the country. Genesis Project, Scandal Shakes American Elite, Cedars-Sinai Hospital, Nursery of Genetic Experiments, List reveals names of families involved in genetic manipulation project. In the Anderson mansion, Emily cradled William in her arms while watching the endless news reports on TV. James was on the phone with his team of lawyers, trying to protect his family from the media storm that was forming. "I'm not giving any interviews," he insisted. "Our priority now is to protect our son." Rachel entered the room with a stack of newspapers. "You need to see this. The repercussions are worldwide. Scientists from all over the globe are commenting on the ethical implications of the Genesis project." Emily turned off the TV, turning her attention to the baby sleeping peacefully. "How are we going to deal with this, James? How are we going to protect William from all this circus?" Sarah, who had become an essential part of the family after the events of the previous night, served tea for everyone. "The important thing is that he's safe now, and he has a family that loves him unconditionally." On the 10th floor of the FBI building, Regina Thompson faced her first interrogation. Her haughty posture was beginning to crumble in the face of the evidence presented. The Genesis project began 15 years ago, she explained, her voice trembling slightly. It was just theoretical research at first. We were studying the possibility of eliminating genetic diseases still in the embryonic stage. But Michael, he saw something bigger. He brought in the investors, convinced the families. In the corridor next door, Laura was revealing other details to the investigators. Each baby in the project received specific modifications, some to increase intellectual capacity, others to improve physical attributes. The Andersons' son, he was our most ambitious project, the perfect combination of all the enhancements we developed. In Michael's penthouse in Beverly Hills, police were conducting a thorough search. In his private office, they found a disturbing altar, photos of Emily everywhere, newspaper clippings about her legal career, even the invitation to her wedding to James. Back at the mansion, James found Emily in the baby's room. She was standing by the crib, watching William sleep. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. "About everything Michael said about William being special," she replied, her voice almost a whisper. "What if he's right? What if our son is really different?" James hugged his wife from behind, also looking at their son. "He's special because he's ours, because we fought for him, because people like Sarah risked everything to protect him. The rest doesn't matter." Rachel entered the room with more news. "The FBI is investigating other clinics across the country. It seems the Genesis project had ramifications that no one imagined. And, Emily, you need to see this." She held out a tablet with a video. It was an old recording from the fertility clinic, showing Michael and Regina discussing the couples selected for the project. "Emily is perfect," Michael was saying in the video. "Her DNA, her intelligence, her beauty, and most importantly, she trusts me. She'll never suspect anything." Regina looked concerned. "And the husband?" "James Anderson is a lovesick fool. He'll do anything she wants. Besides, his genes are exceptional too. Their child will be our masterpiece." Emily turned off the video, disgusted. "How could I have been so blind? How did I not see what he had become?" "You're not to blame," Sarah intervened, entering the room. Michael and Regina were masters of manipulation. They deceived dozens of families, doctors, even authorities. William began to cry softly, and Emily picked him up. As she nursed him, a silent tear rolled down her face. "You know what's ironic?" she said, looking at her son. "They did all this genetic manipulation, trying to create the perfect baby. But look at him, he's already perfect, exactly as he is." Outside the mansion, journalists were accumulating, eager for a statement from the family at the center of the biggest scientific scandal of the century. But inside that room, nothing mattered more than the love between parents and child. Rachel's cell phone vibrated. It was a message from a source inside the FBI. "Other babies from the project have been located. Families are being contacted. This is just the beginning." The lawyer looked at her sister and nephew, thinking of all the other families that would soon face the same devastating revelation. The Genesis project had ended, but its consequences were just beginning.